Sorry. So we can do an introduction. You are to start on the ABC. You are now to start on the ABC. So let us now start on the activity-based posting. We can now start on the activity-based posting, whereby we say that this is a method of apportioning the overheads. It is a method of apportioning the overheads. It is a method of apportioning the overheads to the cost units, to the cost units, to the cost units on the basis of, to the cost units on the basis of, on the basis of the benefits, on the basis of the benefits realized from, on the basis of the benefits realized from a particular indirect activity, on the basis of the benefits realized from a particular indirect activity, a particular indirect activity, e.g., planning, ordering, etc. Planning, ordering, etc. Then another paragraph is that activity-based costing allocates the costs. Activity-based costing allocates the costs on a more realistic base. It allocates the costs on a more realistic base. On a more realistic base by taking into consideration, the volume of production, by taking into consideration the volume of production, and the relationship between, the overhead costs and the activities, and the relationship between the overhead costs and the activities, and the activities that will cause the overheads, and the activities that will cause the overheads, Then we continue by summarizing that there are several similarities between ABC. That's now activity-based costing, between ABC and the traditional methods, of apportioning the overhead costs, But the only key difference is that ABC allocates the overheads on the basis of, the benefits, realized from the activity, So let us now have the stages or steps in the ABC. We can now look at the stages or the steps in the ABC. We can now have the stages or steps in the ABC. The stages or the steps in the activity-based costing. The stages or the steps in the activity-based costing. So, under the stages or the steps in the ABC, number one will be identifying the main activities in the organization. Identifying the main activities in the organization. Identifying the main activities in the organization. So under that, we summarize that the main activities in the organization should be identified in advance. The main activities in the organization should be identified in advance. They should be identified in advance. They should be identified in advance. And they may include, ordering, machine-related activities. So ordering, machine-related activities, direct labor-related activities, direct labor-related activities, material handling, etc. Material handling, etc. So that's now the first step in identifying the main activities. The second step will be cost pooling. Number 2 will be cost pooling. Number 2 is meant to be the cost pooling. Number 2 will be the cost pooling. So when it comes to the cost pooling, we summarize that it involves the assignment of the costs. It involves the assignment of the costs. It involves the assignment of the costs to the cost pools or the cost centers. It involves the assignment of the costs to the cost pool or the cost centers Then we continue by noting that the cost center is created. The cost center is created. The cost center is created. The cost center is created for each activity. The cost center is created for each activity. It is created for each activity. i.e., the total cost of each activity should be listed. The total cost for each activity should be listed. The total cost for each activity should be listed. So that is now meant to be number 2, which is supposed to be the cost pooling. So number 3 will be identifying the cost driver. 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 So under identifying the cost driver, we summarize that a cost driver is a factor. A cost driver is a factor that will cause an activity to occur. A cost driver is a factor that will cause an activity to occur. That will cause an activity to occur. These normally influence the cost of the activity. These normally influence the cost of activity. These normally influence the cost of activity. E.g., the purchasing of the materials in the department. E.g., the purchasing of the materials in the department. Purchasing of the materials in the department may be driven by the number of orders to be processed. So the purchasing of materials in the department may be driven by the number of the orders to be processed. the number of the orders to be processed. The number of the orders to be processed. That's now meant to be number 3. Number 4 will be absorption of the overheads to the products. 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 So under the absorption of the overheads to the products is that using the selected cost drivers, using the selected cost drivers, using the selected cost drivers, overhead costs are absorbed. Overhead costs are absorbed by the product. Overhead costs are absorbed by the products. Overhead costs are absorbed by the products, depending on the level of activity, depending on the level of activity that the product has consumed, depending on the level of activity that the product has consumed, depending on the level of activity that the product has consumed, So let us also have advantages of ABC. We now look at the advantages of ABC. We now look at the advantages of ABC, or advantages of the activity costing method. So we look at the advantages of ABC. So among the advantages of ABC, number 1 is that it is more realistic. It is more realistic in apportioning the overheads. It is more realistic in apportioning the overheads to the products. It is more realistic in apportioning the overheads to the products, because it is based on the benefits, derived from the activity, because it is based on the benefits derived from the activity. It is based on the benefits derived from the activity. So that is now meant to be number 1. Number 2 is that overheads can be identified in the products. Overheads can be identified to the products. Overheads can be identified to the products through their activities. Overheads can be identified to the products through their activities. Then number 3 is that ABC recognized that it is the activity. ABC recognized that it is the activity which causes the costs. It is the activity which causes the costs and not the products. It is the activity which causes the costs and not the products. And it is the product which consumes the costs. And it is the product which consumes the costs. And it is the product which consumes the costs. Then number 4 is that it focuses the attention on the real nature of the cost behavior. It focuses the attention on the real nature of the cost behavior. It focuses the attention on the real nature of the cost behavior, which assists in identifying the costs, behavior, the cost behavior, and the cost activities, and the cost activities which do not add value to the product. The cost activities which do not add value to the product, which do not add value to the product, which do not add value to the product. Then number 5 is that it recognizes the complexity and the diversity of the modern production. It recognizes the complexity and the diversity of the modern production methods. It recognizes the complexity and the diversity of the modern production methods, and the technology, by the use of several cost drivers, many of which are transaction based, many of which are transaction based. So we are saying number 5 is that it recognizes the complexity and diversity of the modern production methods, and technology, by the use of several cost drivers, many of which are transaction based, rather than concentrating on the production only, Then number 6 is that ABC provides a useful financial measure. ABC provides a useful financial measure than the traditional method, by apportioning the overheads, in terms of the activities, So let us also have disadvantages of ABC. We can also have disadvantages of ABC. The disadvantages of ABC. So among the disadvantages, number 1, is that it is more complex and expensive to administer. It is more complex and expensive to administer. The number 2 is that it is not suitable for the companies. Which uses the market forces of demand and supply. It is not suitable for the companies which uses the market forces of demand and supply. To determine the price of the product. To determine the prices of the product. Then number 3 is that if the cost behavior is not linear, if the cost behavior is not linear, if the cost behavior is not linear, it may lead to the wrong conclusion. If the cost behavior is not linear, it may lead to the conclusion. It may lead to the conclusion that the cost of the product will not be reliable. The cost of the product will not be reliable. The cost of the product will not be reliable. That's now number 3. Number 4 is that data availability, the data availability concerning the activity is a major problem. Data availability concerning the activity is a major problem. Data availability concerning the activity is a major problem. Data availability concerning the activity is a major problem. It's a major problem. So those are now some of the key advantages. Those are now some of the key advantages that we can be able to get from there. So there is some questions in your past papers in relation to that. So if you go through the question, May 2021, question number 3. May 2021, question number 3, part A. May 2021, question number 3, part A. So that question 3, part A for May 2021, it reads that describe 3 main stages of ABC. So I hope you can all be able to see that question 3, part A. I hope you are all able to see that question 3, part A, where they are asking you to describe 3 main stages of the ABC. 3 main stages of the ABC. Are you able to see that part of the question? Yeah, so that is now in relation to that question. So I'm checking another question. There is a place they wanted you to give the advantages of ABC. Like you saw, this one should be, you check over in the sitting of December 2021, December 2021, December 2021. There is a question number 5, part C, December 2021. There is a question number 5, part C. That question 5, part C, they wanted you to describe 2 advantages and disadvantages of using ABC. They wanted you to describe 2 advantages and disadvantages of the ABC. They wanted you to describe 2 advantages and disadvantages of the ABC. So that is now all for that. So I want us now to get a question on the ABC. I want us now to get a question on the ABC. So I want us to get a question on the ABC. So the first question should be May 2019. You check May 2019, question number 3, part B. May 2019, question number 3, part B. So we can now go through the question. We should now be able to go through the question. So the question reads that Majakato Limited makes 3 main products using the same equipments. So total overheads amounting to shillings 720,000 were charged for the last quarter of the financial year ended 31st December 2018. So details of the 3 products for the month of September 2018 to December 2018 are as follows. So you have been given for product A, product B, and product C. So you are given labor hours per unit. You are also given machine hours per unit. material cost per unit, and also the volume in terms of the units. Also the volume in terms of the units. So additional information, note number 1, direct labor costs are shillings 14 per hour. Direct labor costs are shillings 14 per hour. Note number 2, production overheads are absorbed on a material cost percentage basis. Production overheads are absorbed on a material cost percentage basis. Note number 3, the machine rate of the period for the period under consideration is 56 per machine hour. Then note number 4, further analysis shows that total production overheads will be apportioned as follows. So cost relating to the setups is 20%. I had said which question? Did I specify the question? Those who are online, I said which question? Yeah, I had said May 2019 question 3 part B. I had said May 2019 question 3 part B. So they were able to give you note number 5. The following activity volumes are associated with the product line for the period. So total activities for the period, they gave you number of the setups, number of the material movements, and also number of inspections. So there is product A, B, and C. So now required cost per unit for each product. The cost per unit for each product using Roman letter 1, the traditional method. Roman letter 2, the activity-based costing. So that's now what we can be able to have. So when we start using the traditional method, we need to get the overhead absorption rate. And overhead absorption rate, you got the note number 2. Production overheads are absorbed on the material cost percentage basis. Production overheads are absorbed on the material cost percentage basis. So what we do at that point, we compute the overhead absorption rate. What we do at that point, we compute the overhead absorption rate. We come up with the overhead absorption rate. So overheads absorption rate. Overheads absorption rate. It is supposed to be given by the total overheads. The total overheads. We divide by overhead absorption base. Overhead absorption base. So the base for that case, we check in that note number. We check over in that note number 2. Production overheads are absorbed on a material cost percentages. On material cost. So the base is the material cost. So if it is the material cost, remember you show it as a percentage. When it is material cost, remember you show it as a percentage. You show it as a percentage. So let us first get the total material costs. Let us first of all get the total material costs. We shall first of all come up with the total material costs. So total material cost. Total material costs. So total material costs. So that's total material cost. We start off with product A. We start off with product A. So for product A, volume in units, it is 1,500. Multiplied by material cost per unit, which is 45. Material cost per unit, which is 45. So when you multiply 1,500 by 45, what are we going to come up with at that point? So So we come up with 67,500. So this one will be 67,500. We also go to product B. Product B, they were able to give you 2,400 units. 2,400 units. We multiplied by 28. We multiplied by 28. So that one, when you multiply, we get 67,200. You come up with 67,200. Then we go to product C. We go to product C. So product C, it is 11,000. 11,000. So this one we multiply by 52. So we come up with 572. Get 572. So add them together. You add them together to give you the total cost. You add them together to give you the total cost. So it will give you 706, 706, 706, 706. So now to compute our overhead absorption rate. So overhead absorption rate, I've given the formula as total overheads divided by the overhead absorption base, and material cost is the best. So when you check over in the first paragraph, total overheads amounting to 720 were charged to the. So total overheads in the first paragraph, it is going to be 720. 720 like that. So divide by 706, 700. Then express that figure as a percentage. So we shall be getting 101.88%. So it is a percentage, 101.88%. So that is what we have when it comes now to the overhead absorption rate. So what the question required you is that we are using the traditional method. So this is now a traditional method of calculating the total cost. So the total overheads. So we come up with the total cost because the question wanted the cost per unit. But before you get the cost per unit, you should come up with the total cost. You should come up with the total cost. Should come up with the total cost. So total cost is supposed to be equal to. So total cost will be equal to material cost. Material cost. Then we add labor costs. We add the labor cost. Then we add the overhead costs. So there is product A, product B, and A, B, and C. So we start off with the material costs. We start off with the material costs. So it will be 67,500. That is for A. We have already calculated them. You can see them. This one is 67,200. This other one is 572. Like that. 572. That order. So that is meant to be the material costs. So after the material cost, the next item will be labor costs. The next item is going to be the labor cost. So for the labor cost, we are also given details concerning the labor. So labor, they gave you labor hours, and also in the note number 1, you can see direct labor cost per hour. So the labor hours by so A, we have 1,500 units. There, we have 1,500 units. The labor hours per unit are 2. Then we multiply by the labor rate per hour in the note number 1, which is 14. So that should be able to give you the figure. For product B, it is 2,400 units. Then the labor hours per unit is 3. The labor hours per unit is 3. Then the rate per hour is 14. The rate per hour is 14. Then for C, there is 11. We multiply by the labor hours. Labor hour is 1. The labor hour is 1. Also multiplied by 14. So that is what will give you the labor costs. That now will be able to give you the labor costs. That should be able to give you the labor costs. So after the labor cost, we now include the overheads. After the labor cost, we now include the overheads. So overheads were absorbed on the basis of the called material cost labor. Sorry, material overheads. So we calculated, we got 101.88. So to get the overheads for A, simply take 101.88% of the material cost, which is 67,500, which is 67,500. This other one is also 101.88%, also multiplied by 67,200. The next one should also be 101.88%, also multiplied by 572. Like that. 572. That question. So get the totals. Get now the totals. Then you give me those totals for A, B, and C. Get the totals. Then you give me those totals for A, B, and C. So I've seen it is 178. So A is meant to be 178. So A is meant to be 178, 269. Then B, it is meant to be 236. It is 236, 463. 463. Then C is meant to be 1,308,000. 1,308,754. 754. So the question wanted you to get the cost per unit. So cost per unit will now be cost per unit will now be, so this one is 178,269. We divide by the number of the units. So number of the units, they are basically A 1,500. A is 1,500. Then this one will be 236. 463. This one will divide by 2400. Then the next one is 1308754. You also divide by 11. So that should be able to give you the cost per unit. It should be able to give you the cost per unit. It should be able to give you the cost per unit. So that is when we apply the traditional method. That is now when we apply the traditional method. How to get the overheads. So let us now go to Roman letter 2. When we use ABC, we now go to Roman letter 2 when we apply ABC. So when we use ABC, when we apply ABC, I had given you some steps that you are to follow. I had given you some steps that you are meant to follow. So when we apply ABC, there were some steps that you are to follow. So the first step, you are meant to identify the main activities. You are meant to identify the main activities. So main activities have already been identified. The main activities have already been identified. When you go to the note number 5, they say that the activity volumes are associated with product line for the period. So they gave you number of the setups as one of the activities, material movement as the other activities, inspection as the other activity. They have already been identified for you. They have already been identified for you. That's now when it comes to the main activities. Then the second step will be to identify the cost driver. So the step 1 has already been done for you. The question has already identified the main activities. So that one, you can see them in the note number 5 and note number 4. In that note 4, one of the activity is the setups. The second activity is meant to be material movements. The activity number 3 is inspection. The activity number 3 is meant to be the inspection. So that is now where we have the note number 5. Note number 5. There is also what we have as note number 5. There is also what we have as there is number of the setups as now the cost driver. Number of material movement, that's now the base, the cost driver for material movements. The number of inspection will now be the cost driver for that. So step number 1 and step number 2 has already been identified for you. Step 1, I've said that we identify the main activities. The step number 2, we identify the cost driver. So cost drivers have also been identified. The cost drivers have also been identified. So we need to go to the step number 3. So step 3, we need to go to the step number 2. Step 2 is supposed to be the cost pooling. We need to come up with the cost pooling. We need to come up with what is supposed to be the cost pooling. So under the ABC, I've said there are 4 steps under the ABC. The first step is supposed to be identifying the main activities as per the notes. The second step is the cost pooling. So step one has already been identified for you. There are basically three activities in that question. One of the activity is the setups. The second activity is materials movement. The activity number three is inspection. So we have three main activities which have already been identified for you. Number one is setups. Number two, material movement. Number three will be inspection. So after that, we go to the step number two. Step number two is not given. So I'm doing the step number two under ABC. So step two under ABC is about the cost pooling. Is about cost pooling. Is about the cost pooling. So when it comes to the cost pooling, we start off with product A. So A, the overheads, cost pooling for the overheads for A, they were able to give you in the note number 4. It is 20%. It is 20%. It is meant to be 20% of the 720. 720. Then you also compute for B. For B, it should be 35%. 35% of 720,000. And C, it is supposed to be 45%. 45% of 720,000. So that is now our step number 2 about the cost pooling. The step number 2 about the cost pooling. So after the cost pooling, we go to the step number 3. So step 3 is to identify the cost driver. Step 3 is to identify the cost driver. So cost driver, it is already identified to you in the note number. When you check over in that note number 5, so the cost driver for the setup will be number of the setups. The cost driver for the material movement will be number of the movements. The cost driver for the inspection will be the number of inspection. So the cost drivers are already identified for you in the note number 5. So finally, we want to get the overhead, the cost driver rate. So finally, we compute the cost driver rate. We calculate the cost driver rate. So we want to see how to get the cost driver rate. So cost driver rate, cost driver rate, cost driver rate. It is supposed to be given by the cost driver rate. It is supposed to be given by the overheads. It is supposed to be given by the overheads. Overheads. We divide by the cost driver. We divide by